Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to take a look at whether or not we finally have an answer to the question of the difference between timelines and universes. And it's a big difference. And this has confused me for a while, I'll be honest, as Marvel has slowly laid out the hints. In fact, at times maybe even made things a little more confusing than they needed to. But I do think it all fits together really well, and Loki Season 2, Episode 2, boy, gave us some really major information. Now, there will be spoilers for that episode, so make sure you've seen it first, but assuming you have, let's dive right in and see what we can find out. And don't forget to celebrate hitting 10,000 subscribers on the channel. I'm running a contest all month. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber, leave a comment, and 5 random winners will be announced on a video in early November and can choose between one of the books or the steel books above. Best of luck. Okay, so one of the really cool things in the latest episode of Loki is we're now seeing their locations on the sacred timeline being labeled. So for example, Mobius and Loki are on the sacred timeline itself, while Sylvie is on a branch timeline. So that's really important. They're being very clear to distinguish between sacred timeline versus branch timelines. Also, we learned that Dox had a plan to bomb the new branches coming off the sacred timeline. And in fact, true to her word, she did it. You can see the bombs being set off not only at the points before the red lines, but even at the points after the red lines. So we're no longer just resetting a small little location where a Nexus event happened. This is wiping out entire timelines, billions of people, as they point out in the episode. Very tragic, it just really brings home the severity of what's going on here. But also what's really interesting is, in these branches, notice they have labeled them. And they're labeled, for instance, branch 616.011.QY435, blah, blah, blah. But the important thing is 616. So I had always thought that maybe once a branch reaches past a red line and matures into a timeline, that it becomes ultimately a universe. Because I couldn't figure out where we get new universes from. I figured they all branched from the same original universe over time. No, they're making it clear that is not the case. These branches are still part of 616 even after the red line, even after they become a full-fledged timeline. In fact, even after they're pruned, notice in white there, it says pruned timeline, and again is still referring to them as branched off of 616. So I really think they're saying once and for all, this is not where you get a new universe. A universe has new timelines, but does not generate additional universes. Okay, that's fine, but where did they come from then, right? Well, we'll get to that. But this was really huge, really, really huge. Okay, so it goes hand in hand with something Michael Waldron, who wrote both Loki and Multiverse of Madness, said during the assembled episode for Multiverse of Madness. I've mentioned this before, but it's really key. He says it's impossible, near impossible, to travel from one universe to another. In Loki, though, you can kind of hop from one timeline branch to another, but you got to be anchored to some original timeline. So he's basically saying there is a major difference between jumping between one timeline and another within the same universe and jumping between universes. He goes on to say that's what America Chavez can do. She can jump from one universe to another. She can literally do the impossible. But the key is he was making it clear there is a big difference between universes and timelines branched off a universe. Okay. And in fact, we even saw that in Scott Lang's book, of all places, right? He talks about alternate timelines and jumping between timelines. And we even saw back in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where Fitz said, you went back in time, then you branched off, but we can travel through something called the quantum realm. We can go between timelines. He wasn't saying between universes, but between timelines. So actually, this is all really consistent with, again, the huge revelation in Loki Season 2 that these timelines never become universes. They're just timelines branched off a universe. So where do the universes come from then? Well, I'll admit I've just kind of ignored this scene. This is from Loki Season 1, Episode 6 at the very beginning. I've just kind of put in the back of my head, this will make sense one day. I think one day is today. I think what they're saying, especially with the labeling that we saw in the recent episode, they're saying universes are created entirely separately from other universes. They have their own Big Bang. So what they're showing in this image is 2 separate universes with their own Big Bang events. Now, one of the reasons I just kind of struggled with this is I thought, can you have multiple Big Bangs in a multiverse? Is that really how it works? Don't they all come from a single origin point? Well, Google tells you everything, right? But anyway, I found some articles on the web. Notice some of the theories about multiverses that physicists, mind you, not just, comic book people, they're saying one of the theories is the existence of a myriad of universes of disconnected regions, each with their own hot Big Bang, that comprise what we know as the multiverse when you take them all together. Okay, even physicists who are, being theoretical at this point, obviously, but saying, hey, if there is a multiverse, you might have multiple Big Bangs. Okay. And then they go on in a different article to say, multiverse theory suggests that our universe, with its hundreds of billions of galaxies and almost countless stars spanning tens of billions of light years, may not be the only one. Instead, there may be an entirely different universe, distantly separated from ours, and another and another. Indeed, there may be an infinity of universes, and this is key, all with their own laws of physics, their own collections of stars and galaxies, if stars and galaxies can exist in those universes, and maybe even their own intelligent civilizations. But the key there is their own laws of physics. Remember, in the Marvel Universe, the Infinity Stones form what we know as reality, time, power, mind, soul, etc. So if those stones formed differently in a different Big Bang for a different universe, you'd have a different set of physics. You would have maybe a cartoon universe, a paint universe, the noir universe, etc. You might have ones where time flows differently, like we've seen in some of the universes that have different timelines. So, okay, I have to accept that Waldron's made it really clear. He showed this in Loki, season 1, episode 6. Each universe seems to have a Big Bang. So in the multiverse, there is an infinite number of Big Bangs that created an infinite number of universes. And then each of those universes branch off with timelines based on their Nexus events. So remember, in this episode 6, by the way, after we're outside the black hole, right, then we go inside it, and look, you can see the cosmos forming, you can see the constellations, etc. You can see space forming, the planets as we fly by. There's Saturn, and then we see the timelines. I think each of these represents a timeline because as we flow around, we go around the corner, and then there we are inside the sacred timeline's Big Bang and the sacred timeline itself, which, as we've seen, is composed of multiple timelines wound together by that loom, right? But I think that's what they're really saying here. Each universe has its own origin point, its own Big Bang, and then can have multiple timelines branching off of it. All right. And in fact, this is consistent with He Who Remains, what he said, because he talked about that a scientist discovered that there were universes stacked on top of his own. Not timelines, not branches, but separate universes. So we see 3 in that image there. Then everyone contacted each other and they used the best of their universes to improve the others. So again, he's stressing universe. Then the peace between realities, so he switched words there, but erupted in an all-out war, each variant fighting to preserve their universe and annihilate the others. So he's kind of using universe and reality interchangeably. Okay, but again, the universes are fighting each other. Then he gives us this, so you might see why I was confused a little bit here, because Miss Minutes says countless unique timelines battled for supremacy. So he says universes fighting each other, she says timelines. Now, I think probably the reason for this is, Miss Minutes was all propaganda. This video was all propaganda, but it was being shown to someone who probably didn't even understand the concept of the multiverse yet. They were just being told that you caused a Nexus event, these timelines are fighting each other, that's why you got to go, because we don't want this to happen again. Okay, I'm still going to say it was confusing, but I can see why they did it. I can see why that happened. But then we learn how he isolated the sacred timeline, because he said, I ended the multiversal war, but he doesn't say I killed everyone. He says, once I isolated our timeline, all I had to do was manage the flow of time. So he didn't win the war by killing all the other Kangs. Instead, he isolated the sacred timeline. And he even warns, you kill me and the sacred timeline is completely exposed and you're going to end up with multiversal war. So we saw this then is how the sacred timeline was isolated, the loom. This loom, and this is more probably of a conceptual way of considering the timelines being isolated, I suspect. But regardless, That's how they're isolated. As long as this loom is working, the other Kangs still out there in the multiverse cannot access the sacred timeline. So we're safe. Then he starts pruning any new branches that create a Kang. Because Loki says, what are you afraid of? And he says, me. I'm afraid of me. So he has to prune those branches. Because imagine if a branch was formed inside the sacred timeline that resulted in a Kang. That Kang would now be in the loom, wound in with the other timelines. That's not good. He had to keep pruning anytime something would end up creating a Kang. And then that's why Loki's saying, hey, maybe it's true. Everything he was doing, the pruning, the preservation of the sacred timeline, it was all about preventing more of him. So this really does all fit together really, really well so far. I mean, they've done a fantastic job, right? Then they talk about these Nexus events. So the Nexus events, the things that might result in a Kang, Miss Minute says, sometimes people like you veer off the path the timekeepers created. We call those variants. Maybe you just started an uprising, or maybe you were late for work. Whatever it is, stepping off your path created a Nexus event. So that's key. The Nexus event occurs and a branch is formed, but the branch doesn't create a new timeline. A new universe. It creates a new timeline. The branch creates a new timeline within the universe. All right? And actually that's consistent with Endgame, because if we go back and look at this conversation, the Ancient One says, now taking this stone, that may benefit your reality. There's that word reality again. But she's saying in the new branch reality, not so much. Not so much. We're hosed. But I love this. Bruce actually says we can return each one to its own timeline. So they were even using timeline before Loki. Perfectly describing it, right? You have a reality, which in this case is the universe. You take out the stone and it creates a new timeline. Excellent. So then Miss Minutes continues to say, hey, we have to stop these Nexus events because left unchecked, it could branch into madness, leading to another multiversal war. Okay, I mean, this all fits really, really well, right? It all fits together. And in fact, we're seeing, because there's too many branches, it's messing up the loom. The loom's falling apart. And I do believe that when this loom is either turned off because they don't want it to explode, or it just quits working, that's when these guys come in. I mean, right now they can't come in because they can't see it. It's isolated. It's hidden from them by the loom. But yeah, they're waiting, and they're going to come, and it's going to be bad when they come. Also, it is worth noting, maybe the Kang from Quantumania, the one that was killed by ants, but not killed. I don't think he was killed. He's going to come back. I really do think. But anyway, maybe he had a point. He says, I saw their chaos, referring to that Kang Council, referring to these guys, right? He says, I saw their chaos spreading across realities, universes colliding, endless incursions. I saw the multiverse and it was dying. So is his method bad? Probably he wiped out trillions upon trillions upon trillions of people. But he's right that if you let the other Kangs play around with time, they're going to result in the death of the multiverse. So does everybody die, or do some have to die? How do we handle it? Very interesting. So I think that's going to be a problem they're going to have to deal with, obviously, in Secret Wars. But okay, I want to summarize where we're at, because I think it's just so important. And then I'm going to show a diagram, and then I'm going to talk about where they really, really confused us with this. But I think there's an answer for it. So, okay, so far everything's worked out perfectly, right? We've learned that there are universes that each have their own big bangs. That's a big give for me, because I did not want to accept that. I really thought there was one big bang, one initial universe that spawned new ones. Nope. It seems crystal clear that there are separate universes with their own big bangs and therefore their own laws of physics. Okay, great. He Who Remains then isolated the sacred timeline, a la the 616 universe, from the rest of the multiverse, and thus from the Kang Council. The Nexus events within the sacred timeline, in fact, within every universe, create a branch and form a new timeline. On that universe, though. It's on that universe. Nexus events can occur due to time travel or just to a unique decision. You can jump between timelines as long as you are anchored by the branch back to your original timeline. So you can't just jump to a random universe. You can only jump to timelines within your own universe. America Chavez, however, she can jump between universes. The sacred timeline is composed of many timelines woven together by the loom. He Who Remains is focused on pruning any Nexus events that would result in a new Kang. And then finally, when the TVA stopped pruning branches, it overloaded the loom, and it may ultimately expose the 616 universe to the multiverse once again. At this point, you have to keep in mind, even though we've seen much of Phase 4 and some of Phase 5, I think Loki Season 2 is happening chronologically right after Season 1. So we haven't got to the things happening in Season 4 yet, in Phase 4 yet. But anyway, eventually, at the end of Loki Season 2, I think that the multiverse will be wide open. So a little diagram, because sometimes the diagram is easier to process. So I'm only going to go with 4, but there's an infinite number of Big Bangs. So I've accepted that now. So each universe has a Big Bang. So these universes, let's just say, to pick 4 of them, created Immortus, the Kang from Quantumania, He Who Remains, and Paint Kang. We need Paint Kang in our lives, right? Then each of these universes can have branched timelines. They don't create new universes. So I have said in previous videos that I thought that's what happened. It is not what happens. I don't think that anymore. Tell me what you think in the comments, but I'm pretty sure a branched timeline stays within the universe. All right, so then we know that ultimately they sent the Quantumania Kang, into the quantum realm. But more importantly, and then He Who Remains won the multiversal war, and he isolated his timeline, a la the 616 universe, from the rest of the multiverse. They're still out there. Well, Quantumania Kang's dead, but the other ones are still out there. And the Paint one's out there. But anyway, they can't access the sacred timeline, right? And then here's what's key, because this was really confusing until you put all this together. In Season 1 and Season 2, in Episode 1 and Episode 2 of Loki this season, we got a bunch more branches, right? That's what was messing up the loom. And so Dox went and bombed those branches, destroying them. But the key is, these were the branches in the sacred timeline, not the multiverse. Because I had a couple people comment asking, so did Dox just wipe out the multiverse? No, Dox wiped out the timelines in the sacred timeline, the new branches. It had no effect on the rest of the multiverse. They're still waiting. Immortus and the rest of the Kang Council are still waiting to get access to the sacred timeline. Wild, huh? But man, this really does all fit. As soon as I accepted that you can have multiple Big Bangs, I think that solves it. So let me know what you think, but I really think this nails it. Okay, now let's talk about why I think Marvel made this way more confusing than they needed to. And that would be what if. I know that some people don't even consider what if canon. I'm sure it is. It's in the timeline book from everything we've seen so far. It's in the timeline on Disney Plus. It's canon. Keep in mind, though, I think it's happening after the end of Loki Season 2. That is important because what does the Watcher say? Well, he says a lot there, but here's the real key. He says a single choice can branch out into infinite realities. Notice that? Realities. A single choice can branch. He even used the word branch. Doggone it. That's confusing. And then he says, I'm your guide to these vast new realities. So knowing what we know about, what I just said about Loki, wouldn't you think that means timelines? It must be, right? Because this has all got to be consistent. No, he actually means universes. He says, in another universe, a single choice created a whole new hero. Oy vey. So this looks at first like it's a total contradiction, but it's not, in that He Who Remains is dealing with He Who Remains. The Watcher is dealing with the multiverse. He is actually dealing with every one of the universes. In Loki, up to this point, we've just been dealing with one universe, the sacred timeline, 616, and the branches forming off that. So when the Watcher's talking about this, he's literally talking about different universes. But here's the real key. I don't think he's saying this created a brand new universe. He's saying there's another universe out there that was parallel to 616, let's just say. All the decisions up to a point were the same, and then a single choice is what resulted in it now being different. He does go on to say, for the record, that's the moment that created a new universe. Very confusing, but we know it can't create a new universe. A new universe is created by the Big Bang. What I think he's meaning is new as in it's different from ours. We now have two universes which are unique because of that decision. Oh, why did they make that so confusing though? You see why I thought, oh, a universe is spawned from a decision. This is not a nexus point. That's the real key. These are not nexus points per se, because nexus points create a new timeline off a universe. He's talking about unique decisions in two different universes. Oh, I tell you what, why, Marvel? Why'd you do this? Anyway, he then goes on to say, but in a multiverse of infinite possibility, is your destiny determined by your nature or by the nature of your world? So in episode 2 with T'Challa Star-Lord, he's saying, in this universe, Yondu outsourced the assignment to his subordinates. So again, he's not necessarily saying a new universe got created, out of thin air because of this decision. He's saying it's a parallel universe to ours, because there's an infinite number, and this decision was the decision that was different and resulted in a different path for the universe. Woof. Then remember by episode 8 with Ultron, the entire multiverse at your fingertips. He's basically, ridiculing the Watcher. And you spent all your time up there? The boundaries of the multiverse are irrelevant to beings like you and me. So again, we're talking about the multiverse here. And if there was any doubt, at the end, the final episode, Doctor Strange says, you aren't just our best hope to save one universe, you are my last hope to save all of them. You are the guardians of the multiverse. So, again, Loki is dealing with just 616 and the branches off of that. What If is dealing with the entire multiverse, all of the universes, which are unique because of different decisions. Oy vey. The one time in What If where they actually mention the word timeline is interesting. It's my favorite episode, many people's favorite, the Doctor Strange one. And Doctor Strange at this point is reading about the Eye of Agamotto, cradle of the temporal singularity, because remember, singularities became the Infinity Stones ultimately, so he's talking about cradle of the time stone, basically, but cradle of the temporal singularity, discovered by Cagliostro, manipulation and alteration of timelines. So the time stone, which is unique to a universe, can manipulate the timelines in that universe. Interesting, right? That makes sense. It shouldn't be affecting other universes. It would affect your universe and your universe's timelines. So they're kind of consistent here. I'll give them credit. And then later, the Ancient One says, I drew upon the power of the dark dimension to split the timeline, to split you. And then she says, allowing two of your possible timelines to occur in one universe. Now, that's a little confusing how she said that, because obviously, from what we've been learning, a universe already has multiple timelines. But what she's saying really is, in your timeline, in your existence, I'm taking two of the possible timelines from your universe and putting them into one timeline, essentially. But yeah, oh boy, bottom line is it was just a little hard to understand What If properly until you really watch Loki season 2. And then it's like, I see, I get it now. So again, if we look at this diagram, said simply, Loki is in between the dotted red lines. Loki is only dealing with a universe and its branch timelines. What If is dealing with all four of these. In fact, the infinite number of these. So the Watcher is actually watching over a lot, because technically each universe does have separate timelines. Oh man, I'm hoping there's a lot of Watchers, because I don't know how one Watcher is going to watch all that. But I think this has finally all come together. Let me know what you think. Be brutal. Tell me what you think. But I really, really feel like this model explains Loki, explains What If, explains everything we've been seeing in Phase 4 and Phase 5. Well, until they change it again, right? But no, actually, I joke. Seriously, I do think they've thought this out, and they're giving us the pieces little by little, but it's such a complex story that you have to keep going back and putting all the pieces together to really get it. All right, there you go. That's what I've got. So don't forget, there is an October contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and the winners will be announced early November. Best of luck to everyone. Also, and again, steelbooks are an option as well. Also, don't forget, we do have the Discord server. Here we are on Metaphysics, talking all about timelines and universes and realities and butterfly effects, etc. I will leave a pinned comment so you can join the Discord server. Love to have you out there. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.